We will now begin with our inaugural panel for today. Our panel comprises of N. Ram, Gopal Guru and Mahesh Bhatt. Unfortunately, Mr. Mahesh Bhatt will not be able to make it here today. He's on his way to Delhi and will hopefully address in JNU today. However, I'd like to invite Mr. N. Ram and Professor Gopal Guru on stage. Mr. N. Ram is currently the chairman of Kasturi & Sons Limited, that publishes some of the most respected newspapers and magazines of India: The Hindu, Frontline, The Hindu Business Line, and Sports Star. Mr. N. Ram has been the editor-in-chief of the Hindu group of publications for more than a decade. I invite Mr. N. Ram to deliver the opening remarks.
Let me straight away join Professor Irfan Habib in expressing my appreciation and to quote him, deep gratitude to those who have organized and mobilized support for this important and timely effort. And unfortunately, I won't be able to stay for the 2 days, but I look forward to learning more about the important ideas and also forms of creative expression that will happen over the next several hours, today and tomorrow, long sessions today and also tomorrow. I thought rather than go over all the details of what has happened, one can focus on issues that have come to the fore and examine them in some depth. And I hope that there will be further attempts to do that, essays in doing that in this collective. The aim of the collective has been inscribed there: celebrating freedom and pluralism, and then pluralism, and in defense of secularism. Celebrating freedom. So that's the issue of the fundamental right to freedom of speech and expression. Although it's restricted, it's limited in the Constitution by Article 19.2. Article 19.1a guarantees it, and Article 19.2 restricts it under 8 categories, but these restrictions are conditional on 2 things. One, they have to be provided by law, and secondly, they have to meet the test of reasonableness, as can be interpreted eventually in the final analysis by the Supreme Court of India. And as a journalist, I found that there are many illiberal aspects to these restrictions. The law of criminal defamation, for example, legislative privilege, and so on. So I'm not going to go into the detail of that one. But while our guarantee, the constitutional guarantee for free speech and expression is less than ideal, certainly doesn't compare with the First Amendment of the US Constitution, and also the guarantees in some other constitutions in Western countries and so on. They are in relative context, relative to our neighborhood. I think we are in a fairly strong position, constitutionally speaking, despite the illiberal aspects that we face, not just journalists, but anyone who tries to record, express dissent, or even artists like Ahmad Hussain and so on, you've seen. And that's not just for Article 19.2, it's other provisions, notoriously illiberal provisions of the Indian Penal Code and the Criminal Procedure Code as well, right along with that. But anyway, this is the overall situation. But constitutionally, compared with neighboring countries, I think we are in an advantageous position and in a fairly strong position when it comes to protecting, or when it comes to being able to defend our fundamental rights in this. And alongside these rights are the right to organize protest. There are several other democratic rights that are part of our fundamental rights chapter, and the rights to organize peacefully, the rights to protest, the right to dissent, all these, and this is part of a growing literature on the subject. The other day, Santosh Hegde wrote an article in the Hindu emphasizing, celebrating the importance of the right to dissent and how it goes back in our history, at least modern history, and how the Constitution is very clear on this. He also points to other examples abroad, but this is one aspect that has come under attack. Now I want to make a point that it is insufficient to say that it's just intolerance of differing ideas, of dissent and so on. And it's insufficient to see what has happened, which Professor Ramkumar described, summed up the various things that have happened, which cause deep concern. But it is not something isolated, of course that has been brought out. It is not something accidental or contingent. It's clearly part of a pattern. It's clearly part of adherence to an idea and an ideology. I'm not proposing any conspiracy theory here. People act in different ways, but it is clearly a part of the pattern, and Professor Irfan Habib's short message, special message, has captured that accurately, powerfully, and elegantly. It is clearly, let us not get into the issue of fascism and so on. That's, by the way, a digression here. I don't believe that we need to say that India is in the threat of fascism faces us, because that would lead to other implications. For one thing, it will dishearten a lot of people, and it also would exaggerate the scale and the capabilities of those who are mounting this assault. It's enough to say that these are awful, or at most you can say they are semi-fascist. But fascism is something different, and this is an important political point. We can, of course, when people speak, orators and so on, they will use those words. But moment you concede that we're in a situation where fascism is staring you in the face, then I think we overestimate the enemies of diversity, pluralism, the idea of India, and also the enemies of our secular constitution and our secular republic. At least the republic, the constitution proclaims full-throatedly the values of secularism. In practice, very often they are honored in the breach. It's a fact. And so that's a digression, as I said, but I think it's an important thing to at least take note of. So I will start with the present political situation. That the present political situation is conducive to the growth and spread of the idea that this is our time. Those who have captured power in the center, let us not forget that 31% of the popular vote that the BJP won in the last election, in the May 2014 Lok Sabha election, is the lowest share of the popular vote any party that has won a majority of seats in the Lok Sabha has had in the history of independent India. It is the lowest. And all current indications are that it has gone down. Not just what happened in Delhi, but what happened in Bihar, what happened in local elections in Gujarat and so on. There are also some contra tendencies in UP and so on. But by and large, it is now pretty clear that they no longer command 31% of the popular vote. The elections were held now, and one of the some of the evidence that I would cite would be a recent poll done by India Today, not known for its deep antipathy to the BJP, more to the notion poll, but doing good polls over time. They have found that there is a clear slide, and in fact, specifically, they have found that the gap between Rahul Gandhi and Narendra Modi, if you can measure political strength through such exercises, has narrowed quite dramatically. He's still behind, but the gap has been narrowed. So anyone who observes politics notes that this is a government in some measure of trouble. We need not exaggerate that. They are worried about what is happening. And in this year, elections will take place in Tamil Nadu, Kerala, Pondicherry, of course, and then West Bengal and Assam. They are going into the details. What's in it for this government? The 31% is going to come down further. because there is no Modi wave in this country, and I would see the present offensive, again not proposing a conspiracy theory, as influenced by the realization that we are in some measure of trouble, political trouble, electoral trouble, and this is going to get worse unless something else happens. And the Economic and Political Weekly, in a recent editorial, an excellent editorial I would say, it's called, I have it here, it's an issue of February 20, battle joined. It's going to be a long battle against the Sangh Parivar's attempt to capture India's universities. That's the idea, and you can read it yourself, but I think it talks about the pattern. But the main point that I got from it is their understanding of this editorial board is this has backfired for those who have taken the offensive, and then they qualify it by saying let's not have illusions that this can be won in any kind of short time. This is going to be a long battle. More attempts will be made, but this has backfired in the sense that a large section of the intelligentsia and the intellectual community, the academic community, we have some very fine scientists here, for example, sitting in the front row, and many other social scientists and so on. Why have they come together? We are not united on political affiliation. Some of us have different ideas from others. This is not a political party meeting and so on. Why have so many people, sometimes in unexpected ways, come together? And there are also the other side. People you expect to come together on this have dissent. Take, for example, the IITs. That they are divided, the faculty is divided. Is there any justification for a teacher, a scientist, a social scientist, any kind of teacher, for not standing up for, or at least not even passively supporting the idea of dissent? Is there any justification for an intellectual, a scholar and so on, for supporting the flouting of the Constitution? In fact, you could say that far from Kanhaiya Kumar committing any anti-national act, reference has been a very moving and powerful speech, and I salute his guts. He's not only a very intelligent person, he's politically mature, and he has brought to the fore the importance of these values, and he has not been intimidated, overawed by what has happened. His experience was pretty awful. It could have been worse. There was some protection by the courts, but there was no warrant for the kind of homily that the single judge of the Delhi High Court handed out to him, the little lecture. And the Hindu has an editorial on this, about this welcome news but strange remarks, basically aligning, you can't attribute motives to a court. But other than that, you can certainly criticize robustly judgments of the courts, actions of the courts and so on, whether it's a Supreme Court, a trial court, or High Court and so on. And in this case, very odd remarks. I have a copy of the order, very strange remarks, where he's lecturing them, assuming that it is anti-national, assuming that you're capable of creating trouble, telling him that you have to restrain yourself, not only yourself, but as president of the JNU Students' Union, all the activities taking place on the campus. Nobody is as powerful as that. But Kanhaiya Kumar has been charged with this responsibility that I don't think any Prime Minister of India would be able to fulfill. But there are other episodes that lend weight to what I'm talking about here, that there is concern about what is happening in the political space, whether you want to call it a diversionary action, an attempt to divert attention from other problems, a number of other problems that have come to the fore, which have caused trouble for this government, or it's something that, they are fleet of foot, they seize the opportunity. But just consider this, that overnight, when this happened and the ABVP was able on the JNU campus to instigate trouble, a BJP MP, or MLA was filed an FIR, instigated the police, a police commissioner who was completely non-independent and said very strange things. First he said there's no charge, there's nothing to justify the charge of sedition against Kanhaiya Kumar. Later on he said it was different. Allowed to get away with it. And then those goons who wear lawyers' gowns, who did all those things in court and got away fairly lightly with it, arrested and released on bail. Even the Supreme Court did not act as it should have in this respect. This shows that there has been an infection. The Delhi High Court judge talks about an infection that must be cured. This is the infection brought to the campuses. This is what needs to be cured, if necessary by surgery, to quote again from that Delhi High Court order. The infection brought into the JNU campus and the campuses of the Hyderabad Central University and various other campuses, including the IITs. I don't know about TIS, I have to be very careful here. There also, I think the student union was not allowed to pass a resolution, if I'm not mistaken, that would express solidarity with the struggle of the JNU students and faculty and others. But we won't be too harsh on it, because this has made an impact. Let us not forget it. So if you read the EPW article, the editorial, they also make the point that, what I said, they see this is our time. And when you invoke their kind of nationalism, you think you are on higher ground. They think they have taken the offensive. And here my evidence, some of the evidence is in a very good report by the Indian Express, published yesterday, March 4th. I won't read it out, but please read it if you have the time. In BJP rank and file, Deshdrohi new enemy, the Indian Express travels to Ayodhya, Varanasi and Muzaffarnagar to find a new, harder Hindutva. This is the kind of reporting that is important, that brings to the surface nuances, details that we badly need, not the kind of coverage that some sections of the media gave gave to what was happening in JNU, including the doctored videos, including the crazy statements made by, atrocious statements made by some of the anchors. I don't want to name them here, but the kind of poisonous things that the media have been able to do. But on the other side, we need to study this. The media have also, I think, done very well in bringing to the fore these issues today. And if you have articles, and let me not forget that one of India's most distinguished lawyers and jurists, Fali Nariman, F.S. Nariman, wrote an article in the Indian Express several days ago, where he said, I have the, excuse me, the notes. And I think this is important from a legal standpoint and what is likely to happen in the future. That he makes the point on what is sedition. The article is called A Test of Freedom. The blurb says to be anti-Indian is not a criminal offense. Anti-India is not a criminal offense, and it is definitely not sedition. I won't go into the details of the argument, but here is one of the authorities, one of the most distinguished legal minds and brains in India, asserting openly that what is sedition? The sedition as defined by Article 124A of the Indian Penal Code, coming down from Macaulay's time. To cut the story short, he's saying that unless something that you don't have to have affection for the government, you don't have to have certainly affection for the Modi government, and unless it is accompanied by an incitement to disorder and violence, and then it does not constitute any offense. That is the right to dissent. And he quotes the 1942 judgment of the Federal Court, still in British India, which provided a rather liberal interpretation of it and rejected the idea that merely to express your even strong feelings, even hate towards the government does not constitute sedition. And it is not it's not unconstitutional. And a Privy Council judgment, Mr. Nariman points out, in 1947, it came, was a more illiberal interpretation of what happened. But fortunately, he says, the Supreme Court of India, this is important for any activist, anyone fighting on these issues. The Supreme Court has gone with the Federal Court interpretation of Section 124A of the Indian Penal Code, that it preferred to follow the more liberal interpretation of the term sedition as given by the Federal Court in 1942, rather than the pedantic and strictly colonial interpretation of sedition that the Privy Council gave and so on. And if you read this article, it is clear that it is neither anti-national, it is neither anti-constitutional, and certainly not seditious. And yet, the judiciary has allowed the police to go with the fiction, the poisonous fiction that we are investigating an offense connected with sedition. And Kanhaiya Kumar, interim bail for 6 months with all those conditions, but I think he understood what Nariman was saying and went and said things that very few people would have said after that. We salute him for that. But he made it clear, we are within the Constitution, we are for the Constitution. I would say on Jammu and Kashmir, I would say I'm for Jammu and Kashmir remaining within the territory and within the framework of the Republic of India. But having said that, many things have gone wrong. Consider what the double standards of the BJP in this context. Who is their main ally in Kashmir today? The PDP. What does the PDP stand on the status of Jammu and Kashmir? They don't accept it as an inalienable part of the Republic of India, as a territory of India. They're talking about self-rule, open borders, freedom for movement across the borders, which according to the government is an invitation to terrorism. And they are their main ally. They formed a government, and even today there are serious attempts, desperate attempts to form a government with this as the main ally. And what is the position of Mirwais Umar Farooq on Kashmir? Occasionally he's detained and then released. But in Kashmir, as P. Chidambaram, former finance minister, pointed out, every day there are slogans for Azadi. And an intelligent government doesn't go and crack down immediately. It makes the point. Whichever the government in office. The Congress also completely failed to resolve the issues that came to the fore. And the alternative was this movement for Azadi. But we do not take that position. Kanhaiya Kumar doesn't take it. If the police had a little bit of intelligence, they would have known what his politics was. The AISF, which is affiliated to the CPI. Is it possible that a responsible and mature leader, student leader of that political formation, of that mass organization, is capable of raising the slogan of secession? If they had a shred of intelligence, they wouldn't have done that. So this is a deliberate, mischievous attempt to take the higher ground, because their understanding is this works. And some of the evidence for that is virtually every MLA that the press has talked to, every BJP MLA or MP, other than a few sophisticates, now say things that are clearly anti-national. That is what anti-national is all about. What can be more anti-national than the idea of a Hindu nation in a pluralistic society? What can be more unconstitutional or anti-constitutional than the proclamation by Bhagavad, RSS Sarcham Chalak, that India is a Hindu nation and Hindutva is its civilizational essence? He said it, he's proclaimed it openly. Is that not anti-national? Is that not anti-constitutional? Is that not a recipe for trouble, for divisive politics? I don't say fascist, because that would overestimate what they are doing. But these ideas are profoundly inimical to the idea of India. If you read Sunil Kilnani's book or literature on the subject, that is what they do, celebrating pluralism and diversity. And the Constitution is secular, and in an important judgment in 1994, known as the judgment in the Bombay case, the Supreme Court of India upheld the absolute mandating of secularism, and it also explained secularism is a big part of the basic structure of the Indian Constitution. You can't amend it away. You can't take it away. And I'll come to that. I think I have a few more minutes. Do I? Yes. Yes? How many minutes? 5, 10. Okay. So I think I'll now restrict myself to this aspect, which we haven't really focused on yet. Apart from celebrating pluralism, I think we've got to figure out what secularism means, whether it is in the Indian context or anywhere. What kind of society are we building, and what is our idea of India with reference to what the Constitution mandates and what the Supreme Court of India has said the Constitution mandates in the MUMBAI case. This is at a time when communalism as a political mobilization strategy has made disturbing progress. That's well known. And although I say that they are on the decline, their political stock is not what it was, we can't be complacent. The situation can change, at least theoretically, and let us not get complacent. Had we determinedly combated the active practice of communalism, the offenses that communalism as a political mobilization strategy has taken over the decades, I think we would have been in a much better situation, but we're not going into the past. So what is the secularism that we are talking about? And I noticed that many political leaders today are a bit timid about using the word secularism because the other side says that you are pseudo-secularists. And the idea that secularism is a tired, formulaic, hack concept. Even some liberal journalists and other members of a supposedly liberal intelligentsia seem to have embraced this fashion or fallen victim to this tendency. And I think this is the time to take a clear-sighted, full-throated stand on this question. I think there are many things going for secularism in India, apart from the composition, the demographic composition of it, and the socio-cultural, socio-economic and political composition of the country. What goes for secularism is history, our freedom struggle, and as I said, our constitution. The problem is the typical definition on offer in the Indian debate on secularism is Sarvadharma Samabhava, equal respect for all faiths, or Sarvadharma Sadbhava, good feelings towards all faith. This is a good thing. Not that we have any objection to it, but that is, you can say, a necessary but insufficient condition for the establishment and flourishing of secularism in India. Over time, various leaders, including our philosopher, statesman, and former President Sarvepalli Radhakrishnan, have offered interpretations of secularism that suggest that in the Indian context, it has a rather special, if not a unique meaning. And sometimes the famous statement by Swami Vivekananda in a Chicago address of 1893 is cited as the core of Indian secularism. And what is that? We believe not only in universal toleration, but we accept all religions as true. I don't accept all religions as true or any religion as true. But the point is not that. The point here is that the core of Indian secularism? Is that the core of any secularism anywhere? And I quickly qualify this by saying it helps. Interreligious harmony and so on, all that is helpful. But secularism is something else, the principles of secularism. And as a concept that must be put to work all the time, in my understanding, it can, and also backed by the Supreme Court's judgment in the MUMBAI case 1994, it consists of two robust principles. The first, that people belonging to all faiths and social sections and to both sexes are absolutely equal before the Constitution, the law, and the state. There shall be no discrimination against anyone on grounds of religion, caste, ethnicity, language, and gender. This is what the Constitution mandates through several provisions. The constitutional guarantee of special rights of religious and linguistic minorities is an extension of this equality and fairness doctrine or principle. The abolition of untouchability and the exceptions to the non-discrimination rule made to safeguard what we call compensatory discrimination in favor of the scheduled castes and scheduled tribes, and also in favor of the other socially and educationally backward classes, the word used in the Constitution. These are meant as devices to secure the integration of historically disadvantaged groups of people and their access to what can be called, even using a liberal phrase, fair equality of opportunity. So secularism as the equality and fairness principle must be based on justice if it is to survive and flourish. And the unmet demand for justice in India has many dimensions: the constitutional, political, the social, the economic, gender, and so on. Discrimination and the denial of elementary justice in these dimensions weakens and saps the practice of secularism. Revivalism, traditionalist attitudes towards women, caste, and social hierarchy, belief in Sanatana Dharma and Manu Dharma work against secularism primarily by denying justice to the victim sections, the losers in the population. And Hindu Rashtra ideology is the most poisonous and anti-national political strand and ideological strand that can be identified in our political space and ideological space. It denies the equality and fairness doctrine and the justice principle by crudely spraying anti-Muslim venom into society, and at a more sophisticated level by advocating the value of what they call positive secularism. Positive secularism as a political mobilization strategy practiced by those like L.K. Advani and so on earlier needs the disguise of nationalism, or rather pseudo-nationalism, in order to gain legitimacy. Defining many-hued Indian civilization and all Indians as Hindu in a cultural sense. Sometimes they say, we don't mean in a religious sense, but in a cultural sense. Legitimating Hindutva, pushing the value of majoritarianism as an imperative of electoral democracy, and calling for an authoritarian national unity, which wants to suppress all voices of dissent. And this, I think, is what pseudo-nationalism seeks to achieve for communalism. But there's another principle which today is even more important, and that is, although constitutionally and legally mandated, it is honored mainly in the breach in our polity. This is the principle that religion shall not be inducted into politics, that it shall not be exploited for political gain. The Constituent Assembly adopted a resolution in 1948 mandating this, and both the electoral and criminal laws have provisions in support of this principle. And as I said, the Bombay case, the Supreme Court full-throatedly upheld this principle, the second principle of secularism. And but finally I want to make the point, we have to be even-handed, and we have to be consistent in our opposition, in our campaigning against anything, any force, any trend, any voice that goes against these principles of secularism. And so we must remember that communalism in India is of diverse origin and content. It's not the monopoly of any one community. Today we are mainly concerned with majoritarian communalism because there's a political party whose top leader in government is a former pracharak turned mass political leader. And that party has now revealed itself in a way that the Vajpayee governments did not quite reveal themselves. There is a difference. They may belong to the same party, but there is a difference in that. But it is honored mainly in the breach. And it's communalism, although this has come to the fore and is what is the main challenge before us, we also have to realize that there is majority communalism and minority communalism, and they feed on each other. Jihadism, which used to be regarded as a fringe phenomenon, has come to center stage from time to time, and it has in recent decades, and often employing terror as a weapon. It has taken a heavy toll of human lives, livelihood, and welfare. And what is most important here, politically speaking and ideologically speaking, it strengthens the ideology of the Hindu right. That is its greatest danger. Apart from its intrinsically being wrong, awful. It also has the consequence of strengthening the ideology and politics of the Hindu right. So I want to end. I've already overshot my time. Apologies, but we have only 2 speakers. But I thought I'll end on this point, and let me again congratulate the organizers of this collective. This is, after Delhi, I think this is the most significant attempt to bring people together on a common platform in support of what our constitution mandates, in support of the idea that India must be united. And Irfan Habib makes a very important point. The nation is not just territory, government, state, etc. The nation is above all its people. That's a very important point. I think each sentence can be elaborated on in that excellent special message that our historian has sent us. So I wish you the best, a productive 2 days.
Thank you, Professor Ram. He issues a timely caution against overestimating the political strength of the right-wing forces at the center, and also revisiting the debates of constitutionality and secularism in lieu of the present times.